when billionaire tech mogul Nathan Rivers bids $500,000 at a charity auction for what he believes is an exclusive dining experience. He never expects to meet Emma Clare, a struggling artist working as a waitress to pay for her mother's cancer treatment. What starts as a case of mistaken identity becomes a night that will change both their lives forever. Calling all love story lovers, today's episode is a roller coaster of emotions. Fate and one meeting that changes everything. The gavel's final strike echoed through the marble-columned auction hall like a gunshot, sealing Nathan Rivers' fate for $500,000. He loosened his silk tie as murmurs rippled through the crowd of Chicago's elite, their jeweled fingers pointing in his direction. The auctioneer's practiced smile gleamed under the crystal chandeliers as he announced the winning bid for Lot 17, an exclusive dinner experience at Grand Lumiere, the city's most coveted restaurant. Nathan's jaw tightened as he signed the payment authorization with his platinum pen. 3 years since the accident, 3 years since he'd lost everything that mattered, and he was still throwing money at empty promises. The auction description had been deliberately vague, promising only an unforgettable evening with extraordinary company. His grief counselor would have a field day with this latest attempt to fill the void where his family once lived. The November rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse later that evening. Each drop a staccato reminder of the night everything changed. Nathan stood in his home office, surrounded by awards and accolades that felt hollow as grave markers, studying the auction paperwork. The charity had benefited from his reckless spending, but something about the lot's description nagged at him. It's too mysterious, it's too carefully worded. His phone buzzed against the mahogany desk. James, his long-suffering assistant, had texted the dinner confirmation. Friday, 8 p.m., Table 7, Grand Lumiere. Companion details pending. Nathan crushed the paper in his fist. Another performance, another evening of pretending he was anything more than a walking monument to survivor's guilt. 3 days later, Emma Clare's hands trembled as she knotted her black apron strings in the employee break room of Grand Lumiere. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows under her eyes, evidence of another sleepless night spent painting by. The light of her apartment's single lamp? Her latest canvas remained unfinished, a storm-tossed seascape that seemed to mirror the chaos brewing in her chest. Emma. The voice belonged to Marcus Delacroix, the restaurant's silver-haired manager, whose French accent had been perfected in New Jersey. Table 7 tonight requires your particular attention. She looked up from checking her reflection in the cracked mirror, noting how her auburn hair caught the unforgiving light. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, his manicured fingers drumming against his clipboard. The guest paid an extraordinary sum at charity auction, $500,000 for what he believes to be a dinner companion experience. He paused, meeting her eyes in the mirror. There was some confusion in the auction description. The charity thought they were selling a meal with our head chef. The guest expects something else entirely. Emma's stomach dropped. What exactly are you asking me to do? Provide exceptional service. Make conversation if he seems receptive. The reputation of this establishment depends on his satisfaction. Marcus's tone carried an edge she'd never heard before, sharp enough to cut through her protests. You understand the precarious nature of your employment here, don't you? The unspoken threat hung in the air like smoke. Emma needed this job. Her mother's medical bills from the cancer treatments wouldn't pay themselves and the community. College art program was her only shot at something better than 3 minimum wage jobs and a studio apartment with paper-thin walls. I understand, she whispered, though her reflection showed a woman who understood nothing at all. Nathan arrived. At Grand Lumiere, 15 minutes early, a habit ingrained by years of controlling variables he could no longer control. The restaurant's interior breathed old-world elegance. Mahogany panels gleamed under warm lighting. The scent of truffle oil and expensive wine created an atmosphere thick with privilege. Rain streaked the panoramic windows overlooking the Chicago River, turning the city lights into watercolor smears. The maître d' guided him to a corner table that commanded views of both the dining room and the storm outside. Your companion will join you shortly, Monsieur Rivers, the man said with a bow that could have been choreographed. Nathan settled into the leather chair, expecting to meet some celebrity chef or food critic whose ego needed stroking. Instead, He watched a young woman approach his table with measured steps, her posture straight despite the obvious tension in her shoulders. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs as she drew closer to table 7. The man waiting for her possessed the kind of sharp-edged handsomeness that belonged on magazine covers. Dark hair with premature silver at the temples, piercing blue eyes that seemed to catalog every detail, and an expensive suit that couldn't hide the coiled tension in his frame. But it was the sadness bleeding through his composed mask that made her hesitate. "Good evening," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm Emma. I'll be taking care of you tonight." Nathan studied her with the intensity of a man accustomed to reading people for profit. Emma possessed an understated beauty that needed no enhancement, alabaster skin that showed every emotion, expressive green eyes that held depth he wanted to explore, and an authenticity that felt foreign in his world of calculated interactions. "You're my dinner companion," he said, the words carrying more weight than a simple question. Emma's eyes widened, confusion and something like panic flickering across her features. "I'm your server, sir, though I've been instructed to provide you with exceptional service this evening." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Nathan had paid $500,000 for a charity dinner. The restaurant was improvising with a waitress who looked ready to bolt. The situation was absurd, potentially scandalous, and somehow the most interesting thing that had happened to him in 3 years. "Please sit," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "There seems to be some confusion about tonight's arrangement, but I'd rather understand what's happening than eat alone." Emma glanced toward the kitchen where Marcus watched like a hawk eyeing prey. The weight of her mother's medical bills, her art school tuition, and her dreams of something better pressed down on her shoulders like stones. She sat on the edge of the chair, ready to flee. And Nathan Rivers realized he was about to discover whether money could buy something he'd thought lost forever: genuine human connection. The storm outside intensified, and neither of them knew they were about to be swept away by something far more dangerous than rain. "Tell me about yourself, Emma." Nathan's voice carried an unexpected gentleness that caught her off guard. Emma's fingers worried the edge of her apron. "There's not much to tell. I work here 3 nights a week, study art at the community college during the day, and spend weekends at a coffee shop downtown." She paused, studying his face for judgment. "I also do freelance graphic design when I can find clients." 3 jobs in school?" Nathan leaned back, genuinely impressed. "That's remarkable dedication. Everyone has to work for their dreams." Emma's chin lifted slightly, defiance creeping into her voice. "I assume you understand that, given your success." Nathan blinked, surprised by her directness. Most people either groveled or calculated angles when they spoke to him. Emma treated him like a human being, neither awed by his wealth nor obviously scheming to acquire some of it. The sommelier appeared with a bottle of Chateau Margaux that cost more than Emma's monthly rent. Nathan accepted the tasting ritual with practiced ease, then surprised her by insisting she'd share the wine. "I shouldn't," Emma protested, glancing toward Marcus, who was stationed near the bar like a sentry. "I paid for this evening," Nathan said quietly. "That includes deciding who drinks the wine." As the burgundy liquid warmed her throat, Emma felt some of her tension dissolve. The restaurant's ambient noise faded into background static as Nathan proved to be an unexpectedly engaging conversationalist. He asked thoughtful questions about her art, not from polite obligation, but with genuine curiosity. "What do you paint?" Nathan asked, swirling his wine glass. Emma hesitated. Her art was intensely personal, born from grief and anger she'd never spoken aloud. Seascapes, mostly. Storms. She met his eyes. "My father was a commercial fisherman. He died in a squall 3 years ago." The words hung between them like a bridge neither expected to cross. Nathan's expression shifted, revealing a flash of understanding that made Emma's breath catch. "I'm sorry," he said, and she could hear the weight of his own losses in those 2 words. "Do you ever worry that technology might be replacing human connection?" Emma asked, deflecting from the pain. They both carried. Nathan's laugh held no humor. "Every day. I built a company that connects millions of people digitally, yet I often feel more isolated than ever." He paused, studying her face. "My wife used to say I was better at talking to computers than people." The past tense struck Emma like a physical blow. She'd assumed his sadness came from business pressures or wealthy person problems. This was something deeper, more devastating, used to say. She asked gently. Nathan's jaw tightened. She died 3 years ago. Car accident. She was 8 months pregnant. The words came out clinical, rehearsed, as if emotion had been surgically removed. I was supposed to be in that car. Emma's wine glass trembled in her hands. It's the same time frame as her father's death, the same crushing weight of survivor's guilt she saw reflected in his eyes. I'm so sorry. Don't. Nathan's voice turned sharp. I didn't tell you for sympathy. Then why did you tell me? Stared at her. For a long moment, as if trying to solve an equation. Because you're the first person in 3 years who's looked at me and not seen dollar signs or networking opportunities. Their food arrived, elaborately plated masterpieces that neither touched. Emma found herself drawn into Nathan's stories. About building Rivertech from a dorm room idea, while he listened with genuine interest as she described her dreams of opening a small gallery someday. The conversation flowed like wine, intoxicating and dangerous. Why art? Nathan asked, leaning forward. Why not something more practical? Emma's eyes blazed. Because art is the only thing that makes sense when everything else falls apart. When my father died, I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't do anything except paint. Every brushstroke was a word I couldn't say, a tear I couldn't cry. She paused, vulnerable. It saved me. Nathan felt something crack inside his chest, a fissure in the ice that had surrounded his heart for 3 years. Emma's passion reminded him of his own early enthusiasm for innovation, before success had turned into an elaborate distraction from grief. The spell shattered when Sophie Morgan glided into the restaurant like a predator sensing wounded prey. Nathan's ex-girlfriend had perfected the art of manufactured beauty, platinum hairstyled to sharp precision, designer dress that cost more than most people's cars, and a smile that could cut glass. Nathan, darling, Sophie's voice carried across. The dining room with calculated projection? Every head turned, recognizing the woman who graced society pages and charity gala coverage. Emma watched Nathan's entire demeanor change. The walls slammed back up, his expression turning cold and distant. She started to rise from her chair, instinctively understanding this was where her evening ended. Don't move, Nathan said quietly, his hand covering hers on the table. The touch sent electricity through Emma's arm. Sophie approached their table with predatory grace, her gaze cataloging Emma with dismissive efficiency. How fascinating. I heard you were having dinner at Grand Lumiere, but I assumed you'd be dining alone as usual. Her laugh tinkled like breaking glass. Is this your server? How charmingly democratic of you, Sophie. Nathan's voice could have frozen wine. This is a private dinner, darling. Nothing about your life has been private since the Forbes cover story. Sophie's smile sharpened as she focused on Emma. Sophie Morgan. Perhaps you've seen my work with the Children's Hospital Foundation? I organized tonight's charity auction. Emma's blood turned to ice water. Sophie had orchestrated the auction, which meant she knew exactly what confusion had brought Emma to this table. This wasn't coincidence. It was calculated cruelty. How lovely that you're entertaining the help, Sophie continued, settling into a nearby chair without invitation. Though I should mention, Nathan, the board is meeting Monday to discuss the Henderson merger. Your presence would be appreciated. Emma watched Nathan's face, seeing the moment he retreated completely behind his corporate mask. The man who'd shared wine and stories disappeared, replaced by the billionaire whose emotional distance was legendary. Of course, Nathan said stiffly. Send James the details. Sophie's victory smile was radiant. Wonderful. And Emma, isn't it? Dude, such a pretty name. Ate, I'm sure your other tables are missing you terribly. The dismissal was clear, brutal, and expertly delivered. Emma stood on unsteady legs, the wine and conversation, and Nathan's unexpected touch, all conspiring to make her dizzy. Thank you for the evening, Mr. Rivers, she said formally, her voice carefully empty of emotion. But as she turned to leave, Nathan's hand caught her wrist. His touch burned through her skin, and when she looked back, she saw something desperate in his eyes. Wait, he said, loud enough for Sophie to hear. This evening isn't over. Sophie's smile faltered for the first time, and Emma realized she was caught in the middle of a war she didn't understand. The stakes were rising, and she was about to become collateral damage. Nathan's grip on Emma's wrist tightened as Sophie's perfectly composed mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something predatory beneath. The restaurant's ambient noise seemed to fade, leaving only the sound of rain against windows and the electric tension crackling between the three of them. "Nathan, surely you're not serious," Sophie said, her laugh pitched just loud enough for nearby diners to hear. "The poor girl clearly has other responsibilities." Emma felt the weight of every gaze in the restaurant, Chicago's elite turning their dinner into a spectacle. Her cheeks burned with humiliation, but Nathan's thumb traced a gentle circle against her pulse point, steadying her. "Emma has no other responsibilities tonight," Nathan said, his voice carrying the authority that had built an empire. "I paid for her time, and I intend to use it." The double meaning in his words wasn't lost on anyone within earshot. Sophie's eyes narrowed to predatory slits, recognizing a challenge she hadn't anticipated. "How refreshingly honest of you," Sophie purred, pulling out her phone with deliberate slowness. "I'm sure the society pages will find this absolutely fascinating." Tech billionaire Nathan Rivers seen cavorting with restaurant staff. The shareholders will be thrilled. Emma tried to pull away, understanding the trap being set. "Mr. Rivers, please, I should go." "No." Nathan stood, his height imposing even in the elegant dining room. "Sophie, you've delivered your message. Now leave." Sophie's smile turned venomous. "Oh, darling, I haven't even started delivering messages." She turned to Emma with theatrical concern. "Has he told you about the accident? How he was supposed to be in the car with his pregnant wife? How he chose a board meeting over driving her to the doctor?" Emma watched Nathan's face go ashen, saw the carefully constructed walls crumble. The pain that flooded his expression was so raw, so devastating that she felt it like a physical blow. "That's enough," Nathan said, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "Is it, though?" Sophie's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more weight than shouting. "Because Emma should know what kind of man pays $500,000 for female companionship. Should know that his last assistant quit after inappropriate behavior. Should know that his grief has turned him into something rather desperate and pathetic." Every word was a calculated strike designed to destroy whatever connection it sparked. Between Nathan and Emma, the cruelest part was how skillfully Sophie wove truth with insinuation, making it impossible to separate fact from manipulation. Emma looked at Nathan, seeing the man she'd spent the evening talking with warring against the monster Sophie painted. His silence stretched too long, and doubt crept into her chest like ice water. "I need to get back to work," Emma said quietly, pulling free of Nathan's grip. This time, he let her go. Emma fled to the kitchen, her hands shaking as she gripped the stainless steel prep counter. The familiar chaos of dinner service crashed over her, but she couldn't focus on orders or timing. Sophie's words echoed in her head, mixing with the memory of Nathan's touch and the genuine pain she'd seen in his eyes. "Emma," Marcus appeared at her side, his face flushed with anger and anxiety. "What happened out there?" "Mr. Rivers looks ready to burn the building down, and Sophie Morgan is holding court like she owns the place." "I don't know," Emma said honestly. "I think I'm caught in the middle of something ugly." Marcus grabbed her shoulders, his fingers digging in. "You'll listen to me carefully? That man out there can destroy this restaurant with a single phone call. Sophie Morgan can ruin careers with a whispered word. Whatever game they're playing, you need to fix it." "How exactly am I supposed to do that?" "Go back out there. Apologize. Smooth things over." Marcus's desperation was palpable. "My career, this restaurant, dozens of jobs depend on keeping these people happy?" Emma stared at him, understanding fully for the first time how disposable she was in this world. Not a person with feelings and dignity, but a tool to be used for damage control. "If I refuse?" Marcus's expression hardened. "Then you're fired. Tonight, and I'll make sure every upscale restaurant in Chicago knows why." The threat hung between them like a blade. Emma thought of her mother's cancer treatments, her art school tuition, the tiny apartment she could barely afford. Then she thought of Nathan's thumb tracing circles on her wrist, the genuine conversation they'd shared, and the devastating pain Sophie had weaponized against him. "Fine," she whispered. Back in the dining room, Emma found Nathan sitting alone. Staring out at the storm, Sophie had vanished, but her presence lingered like poison in the air. Nathan's untouched dinner had been cleared away, leaving only his wineglass and the weight of what had transpired. "Mr. Rivers," Em approached cautiously. "I wanted to apologize for leaving so abruptly." Nathan looked up, and Emma saw something broken in his expression. "Don't apologize. Sophie was right about one thing. You shouldn't be caught up in my mess." Emma slid into the chair across from him, her heart hammering. "What if I want to be?" The words hung between them, dangerous and honest. Nathan's eyes searched her face, as if trying to decode a complex algorithm. "You don't know what you're saying," he said quietly. "You don't know who I really am. Then tell me." Emma leaned forward, her voice urgent. "Not the version Sophie painted, not the Forbes profile, not the grieving widower or the ruthless businessman. Tell me who Nathan Rivers actually is." Nathan studied her for a long moment, and Emma saw him making a choice that would change everything. "I'm a man who built an empire to distract himself from failure," he said finally. "Throws money at problems because he's forgotten how to solve them with his hands. Who hasn't painted anything real in 3 years because he's terrified of what he might create?" Emma blinked, surprised. "You paint?" A bitter smile crossed Nathan's face. "I used to. Before business school, before Rivertech, before I learned that art doesn't pay for medical bills or fancy restaurants or the life my wife deserved." He gestured around them. "I chose this world, Emma, and it cost me everything that mattered." The raw honesty in his voice made Emma's chest ache. She reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. "Then why are you still choosing it?" she asked. Nathan's fingers intertwined with hers, and Emma felt the moment their careful distance collapsed entirely. Was electric, dangerous, and absolutely real. "Because I don't know how to choose anything else," he admitted. Emma leaned closer, close enough to see gold flecks in his blue eyes. "What if someone showed you?" The question lingered between them. Loaded with possibility and peril, Nathan's free hand rose to cup her cheek, his thumb tracing her lower lip with devastating gentleness. "Emma," he whispered, her name, a prayer, and a warning. She was about to respond when her phone buzzed against the table. The caller ID made her blood freeze. Northwestern Memorial Hospital, her mother's hospital. Emma answered with shaking hands. "Hello, Miss Clare? Is Dr. Martinez? You need to come to the hospital immediately. Your mother's condition has taken a turn for the worse." The phone slipped from Emma's numb fingers, clattering against the table. Nathan caught it, his business instincts taking over as he spoke to the doctor with calm efficiency. "We'll be there in 15 minutes, he said before ending the call. Emma stared at him, paralyzed by fear and the surrealness of the moment. Nathan was already standing, pulling out his phone to call his driver. "You're not going alone. You don't understand. The bills, the treatments, everything she needs. I can't afford to lose this job. And if I leave now, Emma..." Nathan's voice cut through her panic. "Nothing else matters right now except getting you to your mother," as they rushed toward the exit. Emma caught a glimpse of Marcus watching from the kitchen doorway, his face dark with fury. She'd just destroyed her job, her financial stability, and possibly her future for a man she'd known for 3 hours. But as Nathan's hand found hers in the back of his Mercedes, racing through the storm toward the hospital, Emma realized she'd never made a clearer choice in her life. The real question was whether Nathan would still be making the same choice when morning came. The fluorescent lights of Northwestern Memorial Hospital burned like accusation against Emma's retinas as she rushed through the sterile corridors. Nathan matched her pace, his expensive shoes echoing against linoleum that had seen too much grief. The antiseptic smell triggered memories Emma had buried, her father's final days. The hopeless conversations with doctors. The crushing weight of inadequate insurance. Dr. Martinez met them outside the ICU, his expression professionally grave. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs as she searched his face for hope and found only careful neutrality. "Miss Clare, Your mother's white blood cell count has dropped dramatically. Infection isn't responding to treatment as we'd hoped." He paused, glancing uncertainly at Nathan. "We need to discuss more aggressive options. I'm here as Emma's support," Nathan said quietly, his hand finding the small of her back. "Please continue." Emma felt the strength in his touch, drawing from it as Dr. Martinez outlined treatments that sounded like foreign words wrapped around astronomical numbers. Experimental therapies, clinical trials, to procedures that insurance wouldn't cover, that would require tens of thousands of dollars she didn't have. "How long do I have to decide?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The treatment needs to begin within 48 hours if we're going to have the best chance of success." After Dr. Martinez left, Emma sank into one of the waiting rooms, plastic chairs, her head in her hands. The weight of impossibility pressed down on her shoulders like lead blankets. "I can't afford it," she said simply. "3 jobs, and I still can't afford to save my mother's life." Nathan knelt in front of her chair, his hands covering hers. "Emma, let me help." She looked up, seeing the earnestness in his expression, and felt her heart break a little more. "I can't take your money. What Sophie said tonight, about you paying for female companionship, about your reputation. If people think I'm with you for money, I don't care what people think." Should Emma's voice turn fierce? "Because I do. Because my mother raised me to believe that some things can't be bought, and self-respect is one of them." Nathan sat back on his heels, frustration creasing his features. "Then what do you suggest? Let pride kill your mother." The words hit like a slap, cruel in their accuracy. Emma felt tears threaten, the exhaustion of holding everything together finally overwhelming her defenses. "I don't know," she whispered. "I paint storms because I understand them. They're chaotic and destructive, but they follow patterns. This feels like drowning." Nathan's expression softened. Without thinking, he pulled Emma into his arms, and she let herself collapse against his chest. His heartbeat was steady beneath her cheek, an anchor in the chaos. "When my wife died," Nathan said quietly, "I threw money at everything. Donated to the hospital, endowed a scholarship in her name, bought a wing of the Children's Cancer Center. I thought I could pay my way out of grief." His hand stroked her hair with surprising gentleness. "It doesn't work, but it does save lives." Emma pulled back to look at him. "This is different. We barely know each other, do we?" Nathan's thumb traced her cheekbone. "Because I feel like I've been waiting 3 years to have this conversation. With someone who understands what it means to lose everything." The intensity in his voice made Emma's breath catch. The connection between them was undeniable, terrifying in its depth. But the circumstances surrounding it felt poisoned by doubt. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Don't bother coming back. Your position has been terminated, effective immediately. Professional references will reflect your unreliability." Emma stared at the screen, watching her fragile financial stability crumble in real time. "What is it?" Nathan asked, reading her expression. "I just lost my job." Emma laughed bitterly. "So now I can't afford the treatment, and I have no income. To help with future bills? Perfect." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Marcus fired you for leaving during a family emergency. He fired me for embarrassing important clients and abandoning my responsibilities." Emma met his eyes. He wasn't wrong. "I chose you over my job security." The weight of her admission hung between them. Emma had sacrificed her practical future for a connection that might evaporate with morning light, and they both knew it. Nathan stood abruptly, pulling out his phone. "James, I need you to call Marcus Delacroix at Grand Lumiere. Tell him that if Emma Clare isn't reinstated immediately with a formal apology, I'll make sure every major investor in Chicago knows about his employment practices." "Nathan, don't." Emma caught his arm. "That makes everything worse. Now he'll think I ran to my rich boyfriend for protection." Nathan ended the call without sending the message, but Emma saw something dangerous flicker in his expression. "Then what do you want me to do? Watch you destroy yourself trying to be strong enough for everyone else? I want you to understand that some things can't be fixed with money or power or connections." Emma's voice rose, echoing in the empty waiting room. "My mother is dying. I'm broke, and I just met you. This isn't a romance novel where the billionaire swoops in to save the day. What if it could be?" Nathan stepped closer, his voice dropping to an intimate whisper. What if I told you that tonight was the first time in 3 years I felt human instead of hollow? What if I said that watching you paint word pictures about storms made me remember why I used to love creating things? Emma felt her resolve wavering, seduced by the possibility he painted. Nathan, what if I told you I think I'm falling in love with you, and I don't care if it's crazy or fast or completely impractical? The words hung in the antiseptic air like a challenge to every rational thought in Emma's head. She stared at him, seeing not the billionaire from Forbes covers, but the broken man who'd shared wine and stories and painted until business school killed his creativity. Then I'd say you're making decisions based on grief and loneliness, she said softly, and so am I. Nathan's face fell, but Emma wasn't finished. I'd say that maybe that's okay. Maybe sometimes the wrong reasons lead to the right choices. She took a shaking breath. I think I'm falling for you too, Nathan. But I need to know it's real. Not just two damaged people trying to fix each other. Nathan cupped her face in, his hands, his thumbs wiping away tears she didn't realize she'd shed. How do we figure that out? Before Emma could answer, her phone rang. Unknown number, which usually meant bill collectors or scam calls. But something made her answer. Emma Clare? Yes. This is Patricia Webb from the Chicago Tribune. I'm calling about your relationship with Nathan Rivers. I have photos of you leaving Grand Lumiere together tonight, and I understand there was some kind of scene with Sophie Morgan. Would you care to comment? Emma's blood turned to ice. She looked at Nathan, seeing her own horror reflected in his expression. No comment, Emma said, ending the call. Nathan was already dialing, his voice sharp as he spoke to what sounded like a crisis management team. I need full damage control. Photos, story suppression, the complete package. Emma watched him transform back into the corporate machine, handling the scandal with practiced efficiency, and felt something precious slip away between her fingers. This is what your life looks like, she said when he finished the call. Crisis management and damage control and protecting the brand. Is there room for anything real in all that machinery? Nathan started to answer, then stopped. Silence stretched too long, and Emma had her response. I need some air, she said, walking toward the hospital exit. Emma, wait. But she was already gone, leaving Nathan standing alone under fluorescent lights that made everything look sickly and false. He pulled out his phone to call her back, then realized he didn't have her number. In all their intimate conversation, he'd never asked for something as simple as her contact information. The irony wasn't lost on him. He could buy companies with a phone call, but he couldn't reach the woman he was falling in love with. Outside, Emma stood in the rain, letting it wash away the tears and the scent of Nathan's cologne and the fantasy that two broken people could somehow heal each other. She had 46 hours to figure out how to save her mother's life, and she was completely alone. Emma spent the night in her mother's hospital room, holding a hand that felt too fragile in her grip. The machines monitoring Margaret Clare's vital signs provided a steady rhythm to Emma's racing thoughts. Through the window, Chicago's skyline glittered with promises she couldn't afford to keep. Dawn brought Dr. Martinez and a clipboard full of forms that required signatures. Emma couldn't give without money she didn't have. Her mother stirred as the doctor explained the timeline again. 36 hours remaining to begin treatment. Emma. Margaret's voice was papery thin, but determined. Stop looking like the world is ending. Mom, I need to figure out how to pay for your treatment. Margaret squeezed her daughter's hand with surprising strength. Baby, I've had a good life. I raised a daughter who works 3 jobs to chase her dreams, who creates beauty from pain, who has integrity even when it costs her everything. She smiled. Don't you dare compromise who you are to keep me breathing a few more months. Emma felt tears threaten again. You're not allowed to give up. I'm not giving up. I'm giving you permission to stop carrying the weight of the world. Margaret's eyes grew serious. Tell me about the man who brought you here last night. Emma had forgotten that her mother was awake when Nathan appeared in the doorway, had witnessed their quiet conversation in the corner of the room. It's complicated. The best things usually are. Before Emma could explain, a knock at the door interrupted them. A woman in an expensive suit stood in the doorway holding a manila envelope. Miss Clare? I'm Jennifer Walsh from Walsh & Associates. I represent an anonymous benefactor who would like to cover your mother's medical expenses. Emma's heart sank. If Nathan Rivers sent you, I can't accept. Jennifer looked genuinely puzzled. I'm sorry, I don't know anyone by that name. My client wishes to remain anonymous. But I can tell you they were moved by your situation and would like to help with no strings attached. Emma stared at the legal documents, suspicious of anything that seemed too good to be true. What's the catch? There isn't one. The only condition is that you continue pursuing your art. Jennifer smiled. My client believes creativity should be nurtured, not sacrificed to circumstance. Emma read through the paperwork with growing confusion. The language was legitimate, the law firm prestigious, but the benefactor remained completely anonymous. No connection to Nathan that she could identify, no hidden clauses or expectations. I don't understand. Why would someone do this? Sometimes people who've lost everything understand the value of giving others a chance to keep what matters most. After Jennifer left, Emma sat with the papers in her lap, torn between desperate gratitude and lingering suspicion. Buzzed with a text from an unknown number, the Tribune killed the story about you and Nathan. Thought you should know. A friend. Emma stared at the message, pieces of a puzzle clicking together in her mind. Nathan had the connections to suppress negative press, but he also had the resources to arrange anonymous donations. The timing was too convenient to be coincidence. She was still contemplating the implications when Nathan appeared in the doorway, looking like he hadn't slept. His usually perfect appearance was rumpled, his tie loose, his hair disheveled from running his hands through it. How is she? He asked quietly. Better. The treatment starts this afternoon. Emma held up the legal documents. Apparently I have an anonymous benefactor. Nathan's expression didn't change, but Emma saw the truth in the careful neutrality of his features. You did this, she said. It wasn't a question. I don't know what you mean, Nathan. Emma's voice carried a warning. Don't lie to me. Not now. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. If I did arrange something like this, would that be so terrible? Would it really compromise your integrity to let someone who cares about you help save your mother's life? Ingratitude wore in her chest. You went behind my back, made me think some stranger cared enough to help, when it was just you manipulating the situation. I made sure your mother gets the treatment she needs without your pride getting her killed. The harsh words hung between them like a blade. Emma saw the desperation in Nathan's eyes, the fear that he'd lost her before he'd really found her. Why couldn't you just ask me again? She whispered. Because you would have said no. Because your integrity is more important to you than practical solutions. Because I'm falling in love with a woman who would rather watch her world burn than compromise her principles. Nathan's voice broke slightly. And because I couldn't watch you go through what I went through. I couldn't sit by and do nothing while someone I care about suffers. Emma stared at him, seeing past the manipulation to the raw terror underneath. Nathan wasn't trying to control her. He was trying to outrun his own history of helplessness. So what now? Emma asked. I accept your help and spend the rest of my life wondering if you think you bought me, or I reject it and let my mother die to prove a point. Nathan moved closer, his hands reaching for her before stopping just short of contact.
Ow.
You make a choice. Not about the money or your mother or what other people think. His voice dropped to a whisper. You choose whether you trust me enough to let this be about love instead of transaction. Emma looked at her mother, sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks, then back at Nathan's haunted expression. She thought about the evening that had brought them together, the conversation that had felt like coming home. The way he'd held her hand during the drive to the hospital. I have conditions, she said finally. Nathan nodded, relief flooding his features. I pay you back. However long it takes, whatever I have to do, I pay back every penny. Emma, that's not negotiable, and I want the truth.
Ow!
About everything. Your past, your fears, why you really bid on that auction lot. She stepped closer. I want to know what happens when the crisis passes. When my mother is healthy and the scandal dies down and we're just two people trying to figure out if what we feel is real. Nathan cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones with infinite gentleness. What happens is, I learn how to be human again. With you, if you'll let me. Emma felt the last of her defenses crumble. I'm scared, so am I. I don't know how to trust someone with money. I don't know how to be with someone who can't be bought. Emma laughed despite everything, a sound that held tears and hope in equal measure. We're a disaster. It's the most beautiful disaster I've ever seen. Nathan kissed her then, soft and desperate, and full of promises neither was sure they could keep. Emma kissed him back, tasting possibility and terror, and the beginning of something that might destroy them both or save them from themselves. When they broke apart, Emma rested her forehead against Nathan's chest, listening to his heartbeat steady and strong beneath her ear. I have one more condition, she said quietly. Anything, teach me to paint again, the way you used to before. Business school and corporate success, and all the things that made you forget why creating matters. Nathan's arms tightened around her, and Emma felt him smile against her hair. Only if you teach me how to weather storms. I'm still learning that myself. Then we'll figure it out together. Through the hospital window, the sun broke through. Chicago's perpetual clouds, casting everything in golden light that made even the sterile room feel warm. Emma closed her eyes and let herself believe in second chances and unlikely love and the possibility that sometimes the wrong reasons could lead to the right place. Her mother was going to live. Nathan was learning to hope again. And Emma was going to paint storms until she understood that some tempests were worth dancing in. 6 months later, Emma stood in the small gallery space Nathan had helped her secure, watching Chicago's art scene discover her seascapes. The paintings were different now, still depicting storms, but capturing moments of calm within the chaos, light breaking through impossible clouds. Nathan appeared at her side, paint still under, his fingernails from their morning session in the studio he'd built in his penthouse. He painted abstracts now, bold slashes of color that reminded Emma of lightning against dark skies. Any regrets? He asked, slipping his arm around her waist. Emma leaned into his warmth, watching strangers fall in love with art born from grief, transformed into hope. Her mother sat in the corner, healthy and radiant, charming potential buyers with stories about her daughter's dedication. Just one, Emma said. Nathan tensed slightly. What's that? I wish I'd known sooner that some auctions are worth winning. Nathan's laughter rumbled through his chest, rich and genuine, and free of the shadows that had haunted him for so long. He spun Emma around, right there in the middle of her gallery opening, ignoring the amused looks from their guests. I love you, Emma Clare, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I love you too, Nathan Rivers, she replied, no longer caring. Who was listening or what they might think? Outside, it began to rain, but Emma no longer feared storms. She had learned to dance in them instead. Like this video if the story touched your heart. Subscribe for more emotional tales, and share with someone who believes in the power of true love. And let us know in the comments. We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers. The end.